I'm Sharon Weaver, and it has been such a privilege to have Gene Swartzendruber as my dad. I will give you a few more details about his life. He was raised in central Michigan on the farm, the oldest of 7 children. Out of necessity, they learned to fix things and maintain things there on the farm. It was a practical education. After Dad completed 8th grade in Michigan, he stayed home to help his dad on the farm for a few years. Then he traveled to Kansas to continue his education at Heston Academy. A little older than most of the students, he was respected and well-liked there. School had been hard for him in his early years, but he knew machinery and he was good at making things with his hands. Over Christmas break of their senior year, Gene took Velma home to Michigan to meet his family. They were engaged. They graduated together back in Heston at Heston Academy, and they were married the next fall in October. I came along the next fall when they lived in a community north of Heston and farmed there. Stan came along soon after that. And eventually, Dad and Mother fixed up an old farmhouse just on the outskirts of Heston, and Dad farmed there. Stan and I had so much fun growing up on that farm. Dad had sheep and pigs, and he farmed wheat and alfalfa there. Mayfra came along during that time too, and so we all have good memories of wheat harvest time, the excitement and fun of that. Since Dad enjoyed machinery, that sparked the dream to open Heston Machine and Welding. Gradually, the farming took second place as he got more and more work at the shop. His strength in working with machinery and creativity at finding just the right practical solution made him valuable for the local farmers and others. He gained the reputation of being a trustworthy and gifted machinist. Occasionally, I still meet another man in the community that got to know Dad at the shop and speaks highly of his character and ability. Heston Machine and Welding has provided work and income for 3 generations now. Dad designed our family home on Willow Lane in Heston, and later designed a smaller retirement home for him and Mother. He was full of ideas, and he really enjoyed making them work. We've already mentioned that Dad was a quiet leader in the church. We, his children, gained so much, too, from just watching him live his life. An honest man, caring for people, and seeking to understand God's ways. He thought deeply and had real wisdom, but was not dogmatic. He was gracious and humble as he shared what he thought. What a blessing it is to have him for our dad. He gave us a strong foundation of faith in Jesus Christ and a great example of how to live that out. We all love him dearly.
From Most. I'm going to share a few things with you about Dad's later years. In his later years, as Mom and Dad moved to the villa, Dad continued many of the things he had enjoyed all his life, but now had more time to explore. Jigsaw puzzles, artistic adventures, and of course tinkering and repairing were daily enjoyable pleasures for him. Reading was also one of those interests he now had more time for. Although reading was difficult for him as a child, as an adult he seemed to always have a book going. In my weekly phone calls with him, I often asked him what he was reading. Very rarely was it a novel. Once in a while it was a non-fiction book, but usually his choice was a book that brought a new perspective on spirituality. C.S. Lewis and Greg Boyd, Philip Yancey were among his favorite authors. Dad was a deep thinker and appreciated reading and studying to help him widen his understanding of life and his Savior's love. One of the advantages for Mom and Dad in moving to the villa was the closer proximity of many of their longtime community and church friends. Dad enjoyed this connection with friends very much, taking time to have coffee together or chat while working on a puzzle or sharing a meal. Many of these friendships deepened considerably as they shared and supported each other through the challenges that aging brings. I had so many quality conversations with Dad about spiritual matters. He was a wise man and a trusted counselor to many. One time we were talking about heaven, and he said, "You know, everybody talks about when you get to heaven you'll get to see so-and-so and all the loved ones that have passed before you. But I think we'll just be so enamored with seeing Jesus that none of that will matter for a while." In the last few days before Dad's passing, these deep spiritual conversations only intensified. It seemed that he wanted to talk of little else other than eternity. He had regrets of all those he didn't reach for Christ. He had questions of what the process of death would be like. He recalled that at his own father's passing, his dad said, "When I get to heaven, I'm going to spend the first 1,000 years just sitting and looking at Jesus." And then he made the comment, "He's just going to get started and I'm going to get there." On October 3rd in the evening, it became apparent that Dad's time was very short. Sharon and I sang his favorite song for him, "The Holy City." Dad had been quiet and non-responsive for a couple hours at that time. But as he heard the chorus, his eyes opened wide and he stared in wonder, not at us, but at the space in front of him. His expression was difficult to describe, but it was a childlike expression, almost like a child that's seeing something so amazing that they just can't believe it's true. Very soon after, with his children all gathered around him, Dad passed into that beautiful eternal home that he had been anticipating for so long. And what a blessing for us to get to experience that with him and to also be able to pass that on to you. Thank you for allowing me to share it with you.
I'm Stan Swartzendruber. I'm the middle child of Gene and Velma Swartzendruber. Gene's obituary. Gene Swartzendruber, 93, of Heston, Kansas, passed away of natural causes on October 3rd, 2020 at Showalter Villa. Gene was born in Newton, Kansas on July 3rd, 1927 to George and Grace Swartzendruber. The family moved to St. John's, Michigan when Gene was 2 years old. At the age of 19, Gene traveled to Heston, Kansas to attend Heston Academy, in keeping with the family's strong value of Christian education. At the academy, he met Velma Avey of the Heston area, whom he later referred to as the most beautiful girl in the world. Velma was the daughter of Reuben and Helen Avey. Gene and Velma were married in the Heston College Chapel on October 26, 1950. The couple resided in the Heston area all of their married life. Gene farmed with Velma's father in their early married years. Given his ability in metalworking and machinery, he opened Heston Machine and Welding in 1961 in a partnership with Jonathan Mast. He continued farming along with business ownership for many years. He had a reputation in the community as a capable, trustworthy machinist. His gift for repairing or even inventing exactly what a customer needed was one of his greatest strengths. Gene and Velma had a family of 3 children. Sharon Joy was born to them in 1951, Stanley Gene in 1953, and Mayfra Jane in 1961. The family attended Pennsylvania Mennonite Church in Zimmerdale, Kansas, and it was during this time the members of the particular church began the relief organization known today as Mennonite Disaster Service, and Gene quickly became involved. Pennsylvania Mennonite Church later became Whitestone Mennonite, Heston, Kansas, and Gene maintained a strong connection and involvement in the congregation all of his life. In his humble way, he was a soft-spoken leader, a gentle mentor, and a wise teacher to many. Surviving are his wife, Velma, their 3 children, Sharon Weaver of Heston, Stanley Swartzendruber of Heston, and Mayfra Most of Goshen, Indiana. Also surviving are 4 siblings, Evelyn Troyer of Heston, Richard Swartzendruber of Valley Center, Kansas, Larry Swartzendruber of Henderson, Nebraska, and Virginia Swartzendruber of Heston. The couple also has 7 grandchildren and 9 great-grandchildren surviving. Preceding him in death are 2 siblings, Wayne or Druber Swartzendruber and Robert or Bob Swartzendruber. We'll miss you, Dad.
The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord lift his countenance upon you and give you peace. And give you peace. And give you peace. And give you peace. The Lord make his face to shine upon you. And be gracious unto you. And be gracious
I am Valerie, the youngest daughter of Mayfra, and I think one of the most memorable moments I had with Grandpa was I live in Indiana and I try to see my family in Kansas as much as I can. So I had contacted Grandpa to see if I could come visit him, and I was walking there with my sister Laura. We walked into his room and Grandma and Grandpa were standing there with the biggest smiles on their faces I've ever seen, because he had surprised me with going over to Grandma's room and bringing her over there so I could see them both. It was such a beautiful moment. I will never forget the looks on their faces. They were so happy that they had surprised me.
I'm Laura Reimer, Jean's granddaughter, Mayfra's oldest daughter, and I want to share a quick story about my grandpa that I remember from when I was little. Grandpa Jean had one finger that had gotten injured in a machinery accident. I don't remember exactly what machine, but he had a tiny itty bitty little nub of a fingernail that didn't all the way get taken off when his finger got cut off in the accident. And I remember one time when I was little, I thought it would be very fun to paint it with my fingernail polish. And Grandpa was so patient and kind that he let me paint his little fingernail nub pink. And I just remember thinking how sweet and kind that he just had the patience and said, okay, that is fine. I remember that. It was a funny moment when I was younger. I did not live in the same state as Grandpa for much of my growing up time, but many of my fond memories came later as an adult when I moved to Heston and was able to live very close to Grandma and Grandpa. And we in the last several years made lots of happy memories with my kids, Luca and Annika, being able to ride their bikes over to the villa and visit. And Grandpa was always so excited to see their progress on their bikes. They would ride their trikes, and then they rode their balance bike, and then they'd want to go over and show them that they had their big bike without training wheels. And he was always so excited to see them, and that was really special.
I'm Lisa, Jean's oldest grandchild. I'm Sharon's daughter. And I have been able to work on the technical elements of this video production. It's been really meaningful for me to spend time with all of these pictures, and also have been able to work with my two oldest children, Jean's great-grandsons, on this project. And it's been a little bit of a learning curve for us. We've needed to learn some new skills, some new software techniques to put this together, and that process in itself has reminded me of a lot of the projects that Grandpa invested in during the last few years of his life. He spent time over the last couple of decades learning to use and be proficient at email so that he could communicate with the people he loved, even though I think that was not an easy thing for someone of his generation to learn. He also spent a lot of time categorizing and working with old photographs, and in fact a lot of the photos that are in this video have been so nicely organized and labeled largely because of his own efforts. And when I think about how he spent much of his life, I don't think any of this is much of a surprise. So much of what he did was marked by the use of available materials, using what he had around him, manipulating it into things that were helpful, efficient, beautiful, or even just interesting. I think this is especially clear in his work with Heston Machine and Welding, where he used the raw materials of steel and bolts and machines to help his neighbors and improve his community. But I don't think it takes too much imagination to also see the same impulse in his investment in MDS, Mennonite Disaster Service, and also his contributions to his congregation at Whitestone Mennonite Church. And in these contexts, the available materials weren't physical so much as they were just time and human energy that were useful in helping to show compassion and to strengthen families and communities. And of course, those of us who are a part of Gene's family have lots of artifacts and mementos that remind us of this impulse. We have things that he made with his hands, some furniture, toys that he carved, even designs that he colored in the last few years of his life. And these are meaningful reminders of the care and love that he showed to all of us. And I have a number of these things also in my life, in my house, that I really value. But I think the thing that I inherited from him that I value the most is this book written by N.T. Wright called Surprised by Hope. So I want to just end this video by reading just a few sentences from this book, and some of this is underlined in Grandpa Gene's own red-colored pencil. The task of the Church between the Ascension and the Parousia, which is becoming a presence of Christ, is therefore set free, both from the self-driven energy that imagines it has to build God's kingdom all by itself, and from the despair that supposes it can't do anything until Jesus comes again. We do not build the kingdom all by ourselves, but we do build for the kingdom.
Lift your black